Hey everyone, something's been bothering me since Christmas, and I can't shake it.
The house is finally quiet again, pine needles in the carpet, one dead string of lights slumped over the banister like a tired guest, and the last of the sugar cookies turning into fossils on the counter. I spent the afternoon doing what I always do after the holidays, gathering receipts, logging returns, making sure our budget survives the glitter bomb we call December. That's when I found it, a small, glossy slip tucked under the couch, half glued to the floor by a candy cane halo. A luxury jeweler.
Date, 2 weeks before Christmas. Item, 14K gold necklace/heart pendant. Price, the kind of number that makes you squint and reread.
My first thought was simple, I must have dropped it when I wrapped her gift.
Except I didn't buy her jewelry this year.
I gave her the espresso machine she's wanted since August, plus a scarf she pretended to hate because it was too nice to wear to the grocery store.
So who was the necklace for? I did the mental roll call of our tree. My mom's candle. Her dad's sweater. Our nephew's ridiculous dinosaur hoodie. No small velvet box. No extra glow in anyone's eyes. I remember every gift like beads on a string, and there was no necklace on it. I tried to laugh it off.
Maybe it was a mistake, a duplicate slip stuck to our bag by some harried cashier. But the receipt had her card's last 4 digits.
Her name on the line.
And on the back, in faint ballpoint, pick up December 23rd gift wrap/no receipt inside.
Not my handwriting.
I told myself not to be that guy, the suspicious husband building a crime scene out of tinsel. Still, when she came home from yoga, I asked casually, waving the slip like a white flag.
Hey, did you buy something from?
She took one glance and shrugged.
Oh, that. It's nothing. Must have been a misprint.
Then she leaned in to kiss me, the quick kind, already moving past me. I said, who was it for, and she said, a co-worker's secret Santa, I think, and changed the subject so fast the air tilted. It's embarrassing how quickly my brain found the ugliest answer.
Someone else.
Some phantom hand, some parallel life where my wife buys tiny velvet boxes that never touch our tree.
I hate that part of me. It's loud, even when I know better.
I told myself to drop it.
I even tossed the receipt into the recycling. But after she went to bed, I fished it out again and smoothed it flat under the kitchen light. There was a tiny note printed beneath the skew, easy to miss, engraving, 2 letters plus date. The order number was still active.
My thumb hovered over the jeweler's website, heartbeat counting down.
I clicked track order and typed the code. A page blinked to life with a pickup confirmation and a photo of the exact pendant.
Under engraving, it showed a preview in soft gray serif letters.
To M, 1224. We don't know any M's. At least, not the kind you engrave on gold. I couldn't sleep that night. The receipt glowed in my head like a neon sign I couldn't switch off. 2 letters M. A date. Christmas Eve. It could have been anyone, I told myself.
A friend, a relative, maybe even some kid in her office. But that quiet, logical voice didn't stand a chance against the one whispering, who buys jewelry for a stranger. The next morning, everything looked the same sunlight slanting across our kitchen tiles, the same smell of coffee brewing, the same familiar routine we'd built over 10 years. My wife moved around like clockwork, humming softly as she poured her oat milk, scrolling through her phone, smiling at something I couldn't see. That's the thing about marriage, the way it can feel like safety even when something's rotting underneath.
We've always been solid.
No big fights, no scandals. She's thoughtful, sharp, the kind of woman who remembers birthdays, who double-checks the oven before bed.
We've had our rough patches, sure, but who doesn't?
When you shared a decade, you start thinking there's nothing left to hide.
Until there is.
I watched her leave for work that morning, same coat, same bag, and I caught myself memorizing the sound of the door closing.
She didn't kiss me goodbye. Maybe she was late. Or maybe she didn't want to look me in the eyes. That night, after she fell asleep, I opened her laptop. I know that sounds bad. I felt like a thief in my own house, heart pounding, fingers trembling over the trackpad. But something inside me had cracked, and curiosity felt like survival. Emails. Receipts. Photos. I didn't know what I was looking for: a confession? A name? A sign that I wasn't losing my mind? That's when I found it, a folder called December. Inside, subfolders: 2018, 2019, 2020, 2021, each year had a single PDF file named Trip. I opened the latest one. It wasn't a travel itinerary. It was a scanned train ticket to a small town 3 hours away, a town I'd never heard her mention once. And the date? December 23rd. The same day the necklace was picked up. For the first time in our marriage, I felt something cold spread through me, not anger, not betrayal, but the realization that the person sleeping beside me every night might be someone I didn't really know at all. Once I saw that train ticket, I couldn't unsee it. Every folder in that December archive was another year, another quiet disappearance she'd never explained. She'd always told me she volunteered at a local shelter before Christmas, said it helped her reset for the new year. I believed her. Why wouldn't I? It fit her perfectly, the kind, giving wife with the soft heart. But now those stories felt like shadows. I clicked open the older folders. 2018, another ticket. Same destination. Same December 23, 2019, hotel reservation, single room, one night. 2020, a cash withdrawal receipt for $500, labeled gift. 2021, a digital photo attachment, blurry, small, shot from a distance. It showed a park bench, bare trees, and what looked like a child. My breath caught. I zoomed in. A little girl, maybe 7 or 8, bundled in a red coat and hat. I didn't recognize her. But there was something haunting about the way my wife's name sat in the corner of the image file, taken by S.R., the same initials she used on everything. I scrolled through the metadata: dates, times, camera type. December 24th. The same every year. I shut the laptop. The air felt heavy, thick with questions. That evening, while she wrapped up dinner, I asked, casually, "Are you volunteering again this year?" She froze for half a heartbeat, subtle, but enough. Then came the soft laugh, the automatic smile. "Of course," she said. "You know it's my little tradition." Her tone was perfect. Too perfect. I nodded, forcing a smile. But my mind was already miles away, on the train ticket, on the red coat, on the engraving that still sat in my pocket like a heartbeat. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every sound in the house felt amplified: the radiator, the fridge, the distant hum of cars outside. I looked at her silhouette beside me, her breathing steady, peaceful. And I realized something that terrified me more than the idea of her cheating. This wasn't a spontaneous lie. It was a ritual. Something she'd kept alive for years. Something she'd planned, protected, and never once let slip. Every December, while I hung lights and wrapped gifts, my wife was disappearing into another life, and I was too blind to notice. The next morning, I couldn't shake it anymore. The name of that town, Maple Hollow, looped through my mind like a broken record. Population barely 2,000, tucked between farmland and forest. A place with no reason for my wife to visit. No clients. No family. No connection, at least none she'd ever mentioned. I told her I had to run errands that Saturday, and after she left for yoga, I sat down at my computer again. I typed Maple Hollow into Google Maps. A small main street appeared: a diner, a post office, a church, and a children's park by the river. That was it. The kind of town you drive through and forget. I opened my email and searched her name with the keyword Maple. Nothing. Then I tried the address from the old train tickets: 112 Elm Street. It belonged to a women's support center, but the website was outdated, the contact number disconnected. According to the footer, the place had shut down 3 years ago. So why was she still going? I checked our joint bank account again. On December 22nd, every year like clockwork, she withdrew the same amount, between $400 and $600, always in cash. Same date. Same pattern. No explanation.
That night, I waited for her to mention anything, a trip, a friend, something, but she didn't. She talked about work, about how the holidays always made her nostalgic. Then she kissed me goodnight and said, "You're quiet tonight," in that way people do when they're hoping you'll drop whatever you're holding inside. I wanted to ask her why. Why the train tickets, the secrecy, the money? But I couldn't. Because I wasn't ready for the answer. So I told her everything was fine. And while she drifted off, I sat there in the dark, replaying every Christmas we'd ever shared, every smile, every toast, every I love you. And something started to feel off in my memories. Like I was watching a movie with a missing scene. Every December, she'd always been the one to disappear early on Christmas Eve morning, to deliver donations, she'd said, and I'd never once questioned it. Now, I knew exactly what I was going to do this year. If she was going to Maple Hollow again, I'd be right behind her. December 23rd came faster than I expected. The air had that sharp, electric cold that smells like snow. She woke before dawn, moving quietly around the bedroom, careful not to wake me. But I was already awake. Watching. Listening. I waited until I heard the front door close, then slipped out of bed and grabbed my coat. Her footsteps were faint on the driveway, followed by the distant hum of her car starting. She always took the early train. I'd seen the schedule in her folder. I followed from a distance, heart pounding, palms sweating on the steering wheel. Every red light felt like a countdown I couldn't miss. When she parked near the station, I stayed 2 rows back. She didn't notice me. She never looked around. She walked fast, clutching her tote bag tight, head down, as if afraid someone might see her. At the platform, she bought a one-way ticket. Maple Hollow. No hesitation. Like she'd done it 100 times before. I boarded 2 cars behind her, keeping my distance. The train was nearly empty, just a handful of commuters and a few sleepy travelers. I caught glimpses of her reflection in the window, calm, unreadable, her hands folded neatly in her lap. She stared out at the passing fields, lost in thought, while my chest felt like it was being crushed from the inside. 2 hours later, the train slowed to a crawl. Maple Hollow. Population small enough to fit inside a supermarket. She stepped off the platform and walked straight toward the main street, coat fluttering in the wind. I stayed half a block behind, my breath clouding the air, my nerves fraying with every step. She turned the corner at Elm Street, the address from the old receipts. My pulse quickened. But the women's center I'd seen online wasn't there anymore. In its place stood a small antique store, its sign faded but open. She walked in. I waited 5 minutes. Then 10. Then 20. My heart pounded against my ribs like it was begging to break free. When she finally stepped back out, she wasn't alone. Beside her was a girl, maybe 13. Dark hair, red coat, the same one from the photo on her laptop. My breath caught. They talked briefly, quietly. Then my wife reached into her bag and pulled out a small white box wrapped with a gold ribbon. The girl smiled, hugged her quickly, and ran down the street toward a waiting car. The woman I thought I knew, my wife, my partner, my whole world, stood there for a moment, watching the car disappear into the snowy distance. She wiped her eyes. Then she turned and walked back toward the station. And that's when I realized. She hadn't been hiding another man. She'd been hiding another life. I sat in my car long after she disappeared from view, staring at the spot where that girl had stood. The red coat. The smile. The hug that lasted just long enough to break me in half. I'd come looking for betrayal, for some faceless lover who stole what was mine. But what I found was worse. When my wife returned to the platform, I followed her again, at a distance this time, too numb to think. She looked lighter, relieved even. Like a weight had been lifted from her shoulders. She didn't text, didn't call, didn't check her phone once. Just stared out the train window, lips pressed together in something between peace and pain. When we got home, she acted like nothing had happened. Made tea. Folded laundry. Hummed an old song under her breath. If I hadn't followed her, I would have believed it was just another quiet December evening.
But I couldn't unsee that girl. Later, while she showered, I went through her tote bag. I didn't want to, but I had to know. Inside was another receipt, this time for cash withdrawal, $500, and a note folded neatly in her wallet. It wasn't signed. Just 3 words in careful handwriting. See you soon. That night, I lay beside her pretending to sleep while my mind ran wild. Who was the girl? A niece? A goddaughter? It didn't fit. The way my wife held her, that wasn't distant affection. That was maternal. Familiar. And then it hit me like an earthquake under my ribs. The girl's age, maybe 13. The yearly December trips. The secrecy. The quiet guilt that always hung around her this time of year. I'd spent 10 years married to a woman I thought I knew everything about. But I was starting to understand something I'd never imagined. She wasn't keeping a secret from us. She was keeping a secret alive. The next morning, she moved through our kitchen like it was any other day, pouring coffee, humming, tapping her phone for the weather. But all I could see was the girl in the red coat. Every word my wife said felt like a cover, every gesture too deliberate. I told myself I'd wait for her to tell me the truth. But she didn't. She never does, not when it matters. While she was out running errands, I searched the house again. Not for proof, but for context, for something that would make sense of this new, invisible life she'd been living beside me. In the back of her closet, inside a shoebox marked old cards, I found it. A photograph. It was old, the colors slightly faded, the edges curled. My wife, 10 years younger, standing beside a hospital bed. In her arms, a newborn baby wrapped in a pink blanket. She looked exhausted, but happy. Radiant, even. On the back, a date 2009. 3 years before we met. And a name written in the corner, Maya. I stared at it for a long time. My throat tightened until I couldn't swallow. All the little details I'd ignored over the years started to rearrange themselves into something painfully clear: her distant Decembers, the way she cried watching certain movies, the soft way she looked at children without ever saying she wanted one. She had a daughter. And she'd never told me. I didn't know whether to feel betrayed or broken. Because suddenly, all those volunteer trips, those donations, those secret withdrawals, they weren't about infidelity. They were about Maya. The only question left was why. Why hide her? Why keep it a secret? That night, I couldn't look at her the same way. Because now I wasn't living with a liar. I was living with a mother who'd buried a part of herself and a man who'd never realized he was standing on the grave. The next few days felt unreal, like I was playing house with a stranger wearing my wife's face. She laughed at my jokes, kissed me goodnight, and asked if I'd remembered to water the plants, all while I carried the weight of that photograph in my chest like a secret I didn't want but couldn't unlearn. I tried to act normal. Failed miserably. Every word between us turned fragile, like glass under tension. She noticed, of course. My wife has always been perceptive, the kind of person who can read silence better than words. One night, while we were cleaning up after dinner, she stopped mid-motion, holding a dish towel like it was an anchor. "You've been quiet," she said softly. "Even for you." I looked at her, then really looked. The lines near her eyes that hadn't been there a few years ago. The tiredness she hid under calm smiles. The part of her that always seemed to live a few inches out of reach. I wanted to ask everything at once. Who is Maya? Why didn't you tell me? Does she know about me? But I couldn't get the words out. Because what if the truth shattered whatever was left between us? Instead, I asked something smaller, safer. Do you ever regret anything from before we met? Her eyes lingered on mine for a heartbeat too long. Then she smiled, small, brittle. We all have ghosts, she said. Some just visit more often than others. That night, I couldn't sleep again. So I went back to the photo. I held it under the lamp and studied her expression, the mix of fear and love that only makes sense once you've lost something you're not allowed to grieve. And for the first time, I felt something other than anger. It wasn't betrayal anymore.
It was grief for the woman she used to be, for the child she left behind, and for the man who'd built a life beside her without ever seeing the whole picture.
The next morning, I knew I couldn't keep pretending. It was time to ask her about Maya, even if it meant breaking everything open. She was sitting by the window when I finally asked.
No preamble, no build-up, just the question that had been burning a hole in me for days.
Who is Maya? For a moment, she didn't move.
The world outside kept going: birds, traffic, morning light, but in that small kitchen, everything froze. Her coffee cup trembled slightly in her hand before she set it down.
Then she said, quietly, "You weren't supposed to find out like this." She didn't cry. My wife rarely does. Instead, she looked through me like she was measuring how much of the truth I could survive.
Maya, she told me, was born when she was 22. She wasn't married, wasn't ready, and her family had made sure she understood what kind of shame that brought. So she gave the baby up, not to strangers, but to a friend's cousin who couldn't have children.
It was supposed to be a closed adoption. No contact. No interference. Just absence. But absence has a way of becoming unbearable. Years later, she tracked them down.
Not to disrupt Maya's life, but just to see her from afar, to make sure she was okay. What started as a single visit became a yearly ritual. She brought small gifts, watched from a distance, convinced herself it was enough.
Until one year, the adoptive parents found out.
They allowed her brief, secret meetings under one condition: no one else could ever know.
That's where the donations came in.
Money funneled through fake charities, letters signed with false names, all to help Maya's new family and keep the secret buried. She looked at me then, tears glistening but not falling.
"You would have hated me," she whispered. And I couldn't risk losing everything again.
I wanted to say something, but words collapsed in my throat.
Because I realized something awful: she wasn't wrong.
If she'd told me years ago, I might have walked away, too blind with pride and morality to understand.
I thought I was the betrayed one.
But maybe we both were, by the lives we built on silence. It's been a week since that morning, and I still can't decide what hurts more: the years she lied, or the reason she did.
Our house feels different now. Quieter. Heavier.
The kind of quiet that doesn't come from anger, but from the echo of too many things left unsaid. I keep replaying her confession in my head, the way her voice didn't shake, the calm with which she spoke about the life she'd hidden.
It wasn't guilt I heard. It was grief.
The kind that never fades, just shifts shape over time.
She told me everything.
About the first time she saw Maya again, at a park, chasing bubbles in a red coat. About how she'd stood behind a tree, crying quietly because she couldn't go near her. How, years later, she'd been allowed to meet her under the pretense of being a family friend. How each December became their secret, her chance to give something small, something to say, "I'm still here."
The necklace, she said, wasn't for a lover. It was for Maya's 15th birthday. The engraving, to M, was her way of marking time, of holding on to the only thing she could, her daughter's existence. And me? I'd spent years celebrating Christmas with a woman who spent every Christmas Eve mourning the life she couldn't claim. I don't know what to feel anymore.
Part of me is furious that she didn't trust me enough to tell me the truth, that she built our marriage on secrets. But another part of me, the quieter part, understands. Because I saw her face when she spoke about Maya.
That wasn't deceit. That was love. Complicated, imperfect, desperate love. Last night, she asked if I could ever forgive her. I didn't answer. Not because I don't want to, but because forgiveness feels too simple for something like this. How do you forgive someone for protecting what you didn't know was already yours to lose? The house is quiet again tonight.
The Christmas tree's still up, the lights dim, blinking like a heartbeat in the dark.
She's asleep in the next room.
And on the table in front of me lies that same photo, her and Maya, in the hospital, before I ever existed in their story.
I traced the edge of the picture with my thumb and realized something I never thought I would. Maybe love isn't about honesty. Maybe sometimes it's about mercy, the kind that hurts just enough to keep you human. If you were in my place, would you forgive a lie told out of love?